When my former fiance's name, Liam, flashed across my phone screen, Julian's smile widened. His strong fingers were wrapped around my waist, holding me securely against him with a gentle pressure. His warm breath ghosted over my ear as he leaned in and playfully bit my earlobe. "Are you trying to make him jealous?" he murmured, his voice a low rumble. "Your methods are a little obvious, don't you think?" I didn't say anything. I didn't dare to. Speaking would only encourage him, and he was already being difficult enough. I really did want to see the sun come up tomorrow. The atmosphere in the presidential suite of the Four Seasons Hotel was getting uncomfortably warm, and Liam's call was still ringing. It was his wedding day, the day he was marrying my sister, Claire. One was the legitimate heiress who had recently returned to the family, and the other was a prominent figure from the financial world. Their lavish wedding was being broadcast live for everyone to see, bringing together a crowd of influential guests. So why, in the middle of all that, was he calling me the woman he'd just cast aside? A sudden, sharp pressure on my earlobe made me flinch. I looked over and met Julian's dark, displeased eyes. "Trying to have it both ways?" he asked quietly. He reached for the remote on the bedside table and turned on the large screen on the wall. It immediately showed the live feed of the wedding. On the stage, Claire held Liam's phone, her expression a mask of worry. "Why isn't my sister answering? She ran away from home a week ago. I'm so worried something might have happened to her." I scoffed internally. I didn't run away from home. Claire had systematically orchestrated situations that made me look bad until my parents felt they had no choice but to cut ties with me. The night before I was officially replaced, Liam had also come to collect the keys to all his properties. "My fiancée needs to be the true Davenport heiress," he had told me coldly. "Our relationship is over. I don't want Claire to get the wrong idea." Just like that, 7 years of my life and devotion were reduced to nothing more than a temporary arrangement, something easily discarded. Now, the man responsible for it all, Julian, held a glass of champagne, his handsome face looking entirely untroubled. Back on the screen, Liam took Claire by the waist in a gesture that was meant to look loving. "If she's not here, she's not here," he said, his voice flat. "It's for the best. We don't need her causing a scene at our wedding." Julian whispered in my ear again. "Go on, give him the scene he's so afraid of." I just rolled my eyes at him. In response, his grip tightened and his voice became serious. "Ava, you started this," he said softly. "Aren't you going to see it through?" For my own sake, I knew I had to play along. I let out a small, deliberate cry as I grabbed onto his back. "Please, just stop," I begged in a hushed tone. Julian let out a soft chuckle and finally eased his grip. But in the next moment, my pleading voice, along with his laugh, somehow echoed from the speakers at the wedding venue. The live feed was filled with confused murmurs from the guests. What was that? Was that Ava shouting? It sounded intimate. And was that a man laughing? Wait, I think the wedding march was in the background of their call. It sounds like we're hearing their side of the conversation. Julian laughed again and ended the call. On the screen, Claire stood frozen, phone in hand. Liam's face went dark, his expression turning thunderous. Julian was his lifelong rival, a man from the same circles who always seemed to one-up him. Before I was demoted to a fake heiress, I had also been a well-known figure in our world for over 20 years, and I had my pride. That's why, the moment I dragged my suitcase out of the Davenport estate, I went straight to the manor of my childhood friend, Julian. I walked in, took the Maine Coon cat, Vivian, right out of his arms and declared, "All right, I accept your proposal. From now on, you can take care of me." Julian simply turned and called his medical staff. "Get her something for a fever," he said, reaching for the cat. I held Vivian tighter. "I don't have a fever. My temperature is perfectly normal." "Are you sure?" He looked at me, his brow furrowed. "You're just now responding to something I said 7 years ago. You must be thinking very clearly." "I wasn't thinking clearly 7 years ago," I said earnestly. "My head was filled with school and Liam. Besides, these things need to be considered carefully." Julian gave a small, dry laugh. "Is it careful consideration? Or were you just dumped and came running to your childhood friend as a backup plan to save face?" "It's both," I admitted without shame. I then walked over to his antique desk, picked up a business folder, and waved it at him. "But I bet you won't turn me down now," I said with a smile. Julian didn't respond right away, his gaze steady and intense. Finally, a small smirk appeared on his face as he stood up. He took the folder from my hand and calmly placed Vivian on the sofa. The next moment, his arms were around my waist, pulling me in. "If we're going to do this," he warned, his voice low, "don't have any regrets." His voice brought me back to the present. He pinched my nose lightly. "You get lost in your own head too often." I grabbed a pillow and tossed it at his face. "You're unbelievable. Who answers a phone call during something like this, especially when it's being live streamed?" He just chuckled. "It makes it more exciting." He pulled me onto his lap, his eyes fixed on the projection screen where Liam's face was now contorted with rage. "Looks like he's angry," Julian noted with satisfaction. "Does it make you happy seeing him get so worked up over you?" Just as he said it, Liam pushed Claire's hand away and stormed off the wedding stage. A startled Claire turned pale. "Liam, where are you going?" He paused only for a second before shaking her off again. "I have to take care of something. We'll pause the wedding for now." Watching the bizarre scene unfold, I couldn't help but laugh. "Wow, you can just pause a wedding?" A low sigh sounded next to my ear, a clear sign of Julian's dissatisfaction with my divided attention. I couldn't bear to watch the chaotic live broadcast anymore. Just then, a soft knock came from the bedroom door, followed by the hesitant voice of Julian's assistant. "Sir, sorry to interrupt, but we just got word that Liam is conducting a search of every major hotel suite in the city. He's on his way here." Julian let out a low laugh, his arms tightening around my waist. "Let him get as far as the suite door." "Understood." I held onto his strong shoulders and squinted at him. "So you knew he would come here? I was wondering why we were in a hotel instead of your estate today." Julian raised an eyebrow. "Anticipating your opponent's moves is just good business." "Right," I said, rolling my eyes again. I poked him in the side. "Did you also anticipate that I'm completely exhausted right now?" A vein pulsed on his forehead. "Patience," he said through gritted teeth. "We have to wait for our guest of honor to arrive, don't we?" He thought for a moment, a glint in his eyes. "On second thought, I've changed my mind. Let the guest come all the way to the bedroom door." I froze, suddenly remembering the items we'd left scattered on the sofa in the living room. "You wouldn't," I whispered. Julian just smirked, leaning down to silence any further protest with a kiss. A few moments later, we heard a commotion outside the bedroom. "Mr. Liam, I'm sorry, this is a private suite." "Get out of my way," Liam's angry voice shot back. Julian picked up the remote and switched the screen to the security camera feed from the living room. The footage showed Liam shoving the assistant aside and storming in. He stopped dead in his tracks, stunned by the sight before him. On the large leather sofa lay the scattered pieces of our old high school uniforms. Liam walked forward as if in a trance, his fingers trembling as he picked up my old uniform shirt. He stared blankly at a faint stain on the collar. 7 years ago, on the day I had worked up the courage to confess my feelings to him, a ripe fruit had fallen from a tree and landed on my shoulder, staining my shirt and interrupting my clumsy speech. He had been leaning against that same tree, and for the first time, I saw a smile on his usually stern face. I thought I had finally gotten through to him. Suddenly, Julian lifted me from the bed and carried me over to the bedroom door. His expression was cold for a second before he took my hand and placed it on the doorknob. "Do you miss him?" "Go on. Open the door and go out." He pressed my hand down on the handle with a challenging look. My heart pounded, and I quickly wrapped my arms around his neck, planting a soft kiss near his ear. From the other side of the door, Liam's voice came again, more frantic this time. "Ava, come out!" He started running towards the door, making my head ache even more. His voice began to tremble. "Ava, please! Why are you with someone else? Why did it have to be Julian?" Julian let out a frustrated chuckle. He pulled the door open just a crack. I flinched, but he quickly moved me to the side, out of sight. He peered through the opening, a taunting smirk on his face. "You seem to have a problem with me," he said to the man outside. "But who she chooses to be with is really none of your business, is it? Her brother-in-law." His words, laced with insinuation, hung in the air. Liam tried to force the door open, shouting, "Julian, let her go. You just wait. I won't let you get away with this." Julian easily pushed the door closed, and the assistant and other staff outside quickly escorted a struggling Liam away. As silence finally returned to the suite, the farce was over. I couldn't hold on any longer and collapsed, passing out completely. When I woke up, I was starving, and the early morning sun was streaming into the room. I was back in the lavish bedroom at Julian's estate, with no memory of how I got there. My phone was buzzing nonstop on the bedside table. The online comment sections were on fire. I heard Liam searched every hotel in the city last night. Not sure if he found anyone, but he sure kept the police busy. Claire had a rough night. I heard she fainted right at the wedding. But Ava is something else. How did a rejected fake heiress get the attention of someone like Julian? My social media was flooded with people asking for a comment. After a moment, I got out of bed. Just as I opened my bedroom door, I ran into Julian's assistant coming up the stairs. "Good morning, Miss Ava. The boss is almost finished with breakfast. He sent me to get you." "He's cooking again?" I peeked towards the kitchen and smelled the delicious aroma wafting through the air. Sure enough, there was Julian, wearing an apron, busy at the stove. I hurried over, my stomach grumbling, and snatched a sausage from a plate, popping it into my mouth. A hand gently tapped mine. "That's not very ladylike." "I don't care," I said, grabbing another one. I turned and leaned against his arm, held up my phone, and took a selfie of us together. I posted it directly to my social media accounts. The comments exploded instantly. Ava responded, "It really is Julian." Wait, is he making soup for her? What a breakfast. She seems to know her place, ruining a wedding and then showing off like this. She's shameless. I shrugged and put my phone down to continue eating. The arm behind me tensed for a second. "You really have no shame, do you?" Julian said. "They're not wrong," I chuckled, gesturing to myself. "I'm wearing a silk nightgown with incriminating marks all over my neck, eating food cooked by a powerful man. I am his woman, am I not?" Julian just glanced at me and shook his head slightly. "Any plans for today?" "I'm going back to the Davenport house today," I said, picking up a freshly steamed dumpling. I left in such a hurry I forgot to grab some of my things. His gaze returned to me. "You certainly know how to pick your moments. Need me to come along and provide some backup?" I waved my hand. "No, that's not necessary. I just need to borrow a couple of your bodyguards. I have a lot of stuff to move." Julian nodded. "Come back early. Don't forget about the auction tonight." He calmly sliced an omelet, the morning sun highlighting the sharp, elegant lines of his face. In the daylight, he looked so refined. Nothing like the teasing man from the night before. Remembering a funny line from a book, I pulled a chair up next to him. "Hey," I joked, "are you going through a difficult time?" Julian paused, knife in hand. His gaze darkened. "Do you still want to be able to leave the house today?" Ignoring him, I finished my breakfast and headed to the Davenport residence, which was just as chaotic as I had expected. The jilted bride from yesterday, Claire, stood dejectedly at the entrance, while faint sounds of crying and comforting words could be heard from inside. When he heard the car, Liam turned around. His eyes lit up when he saw me. "Ava." Then his gaze drifted down to my neckline and he stopped, his expression turning cold. "Aren't you going to cover yourself up a little?" "It's 95 degrees out here," I replied, brushing past him. "Are you trying to make me get heat stroke?" I went straight for the front door, which happened to swing open just as I reached it. My brother Mark saw me, and any trace of warmth on his face disappeared. "What are you doing here? You ruined Claire's wedding, and you still have the nerve to show your face?" I frowned and crossed my arms. "Claire was the one who called me. I stayed away from the wedding just like you all wanted, right? But you couldn't leave it alone. I haven't accused you of causing problems, have I?" "You—" Mark's face turned red with anger, and he raised his hand to slap me. Before my bodyguards could move, another hand shot out and grabbed Mark's wrist. "Mark, she's still your sister," Liam said softly, looking at me with an expression of pity. Mark sneered. "Liam, haven't you hurt Claire enough? Don't forget you're here to beg for her forgiveness. The only reason you're not kneeling at the door is because I'm being generous." Liam opened his mouth to say something, but then fell silent, letting go of Mark's hand. His gaze lingered on Mark's hand, and then he seemed to notice something, his eyes widening. Mark, have you always worn those two rings on your right hand? What? Mark fiddled with the rings, looking at him strangely. What's it to you? As soon as he spoke, Liam looked as if he'd been struck by lightning. I knew what he was thinking. He was remembering the night my face had been scratched by Mark's rings during an argument, leaving bloody marks. When I had gone to Liam's mansion afterward, distraught, he had just sneered at me. Couldn't get any sympathy from your family, so you came running to me? Did you ever stop to think that maybe it was your fault? I ignored the intense look he was now giving me and pushed past Mark into the house. On the sofa, Claire was crying pitifully while my former foster parents, Mr. and Mrs. Davenport, comforted her. All three of them were stunned to see me. What do you need? Mr. Davenport asked coldly. It was hard to believe that just 6 months ago, this was the man who had promised me the world. I'm here to get the things I didn't have time to take last time, I said, signaling for the bodyguards to come inside. I'm only taking what belongs to me. I don't care about anything else. At this, Mr. Davenport's face darkened even more. Ava, there is nothing of yours left in this house. The fact that we are letting you keep our last name is the last favor we will do for you. Oh. I stopped looking at him and pointed to the beautifully framed oil paintings in the living room. Pack up this one, and that one over there. They're all coming with me. As the bodyguard started to move, Mr. Davenport jumped up. What do you think you're doing? Those paintings belong to our family. You can't take them. These paintings are all mine, I said calmly, taking packaging materials from one of the guards and carefully wrapping a canvas. How did they suddenly become yours? The rights to my own creations belong to me, don't they? Claire, who had been sobbing, suddenly stopped. She shakily ran over and grabbed my wrist, a flash of disgust in her eyes that she quickly masked with a pitiable expression. Sister, can you please just leave the paintings here for one more night? Just one night. I promise I'll pack them myself and send them to Mr. Julian's estate tomorrow. I looked at her, then at the panicked faces of the Davenports behind her, and I couldn't help but laugh. What kind of scheme are you trying to pull with my paintings? Just as I spoke, a burst of cheerful conversation came from outside. Mark walked in with a sophisticated-looking Western man who looked familiar. He was enthusiastically making introductions in fluent English. This is our family home. This is my father, Mr. Davenport, and my mother, Mrs. Davenport. Dad, Mom, this is the renowned collector, Mr. Dubois. He then pointed to a pale-faced Claire. And this is my sister, Miss Ava. I never expected to see you here. Before Mark could finish, the older man walked excitedly towards me. The rumors about the talent of the Davenport's daughter are absolutely true. This is fantastic. This left Mr. Davenport and Mark completely speechless. You two know each other? Mr. Dubois smiled and nodded. Yes, we've met before. His gaze then fell on Claire, and his expression turned to one of confusion. Oh, Mr. Davenport, you were saying this is who? The Davenports avoided his eyes, unable to answer. So it was up to me to break the awkward silence. Mr. Dubois, are you interested in buying my paintings again? I shook his hand warmly. I'm so sorry, I've just moved, so many of my pieces need to be sorted out before I can sell them. However, I will be participating in an auction tonight and will be showcasing my most anticipated piece. Is that so? Mr. Dubois's eyes lit up. I will definitely be there. Without even saying goodbye to the Davenport family, he hurried off to prepare. I glanced at the Davenports, whose faces were a mixture of shock and anger, and shrugged. So, do you still need to borrow my paintings? No one answered. Well then, I'll continue. As I got to the last and most important painting, Liam suddenly walked back in. When he saw the painting, his eyes brightened instantly. Ava, are you taking this one with you too? I glanced at him and then back at the portrait. The young man in the painting was dressed in a white school uniform, looking handsome and untouchable. A boy like that had once held a very important place in my heart. But things were different now, and that place felt distant and faded. I smirked. Yes, this one is very important to me. I'm taking it to the auction. A flicker of hope appeared in Liam's eyes. Seeing this seemed to provoke Claire, who rushed towards me and raised her hand to slap me. Ava, are you insane? Liam is my husband. Even though our wedding was ruined, we are already married. She and her brother even slapped the same way. I didn't even bother to dodge, just waited for the bodyguards to step between us, protecting both me and the painting. Don't worry, little sister, I said calmly. All I want now is to be taken care of by the top man in the city. I don't have time for schemes like stealing someone else's husband. Oh, and by the way, my husband and I just got our marriage license. We'll be having our own wedding soon. If you'd like to come, I can have my assistant send you an invitation. With that, I left with all of my paintings, hearing Claire screaming behind me. What schemes? You're the one who tried to steal someone else's man. Liam loved me first. Before she could finish, I saw in the reflection of the glass door that Mark had covered her mouth. Liam's face was a mess of confusion and panic, and he tried to follow me out, but Mark quickly closed the door behind me. After leaving the Davenports, I had the bodyguards take the paintings back to Julian's estate while I went to enjoy a 3-star Michelin meal. I felt pretty good. I thought about what Claire had said. It seemed their relationship hadn't started after she reconnected with the family. And Mark's reaction was also very strange. When I casually strolled back into the mansion later, I found that Julian had also left work early. He was sitting in the living room, critically examining each one of my paintings. The portrait of Liam was placed in the most prominent position. Seeing his obvious displeasure, I chuckled and walked over. I glanced at the antique letter opener he was holding tightly in his hand, and then stood in front of the painting. Be careful with that. It's supposed to be the main event at my auction tonight. Julian raised an eyebrow and put the letter opener back on the table. He picked up Vivian and laughed softly. Aren't you afraid you'll be embarrassed when it sells for a low price? I shrugged. It doesn't matter. That's not our main goal anyway. Julian fell silent. The cat wriggled uncomfortably in his arms until it finally managed to jump down. I laughed at the sight and went over to him. Don't be jealous. How about I paint a portrait of you? It won't be for sale. We can just frame it and hang it in your study so you can admire my incredible artistic talent every day. Julian glanced at me, then turned his face away and snorted. I don't want the same tactics you used on other men. I'm not interested. He was being difficult. I rolled my eyes at him. Fine, let's get ready for the auction. What should I wear? Julian smirked and snapped his fingers. An assistant brought in a custom-made evening gown. It was a dark, trailing gown adorned with what looked like tiny diamonds, sparkling like a night sky. It was paired with a matching set of amethyst jewelry. Miss Ava, Mr. Julian ordered this for you a long time ago, the assistant whispered to me. A sharp cough from Julian interrupted him. Go get the maid to help her change. Yes, sir, the assistant said, running off with a smile. I thought for a moment and then called the assistant back. No need for the maid, just bring me the dress. I took the dress rack and followed Julian. Help me change. Julian hesitated for a second, then stood up and gave a slight nod. I stood in front of him and raised an eyebrow. We've been married for a week. Are you telling me you're not willing to help me with a dress? He squinted at me for a long moment before finally nodding and chuckling. All right, but then you have to help me with my suit. Deal. 15 minutes later, wearing the elegant dress, I was being held against the wardrobe as Julian showered me with kisses. I pushed at his hand, which was wandering a little too close to my waist. It'll get wrinkled. If it wrinkles, we'll change it. Or have it ironed, the man murmured in my ear, his voice hoarse. The auction doesn't start for another 4 hours. I don't mind helping you change a few more times. I'm afraid you'll use every single minute of those 4 hours, I said, quickly changing the subject. Let's focus on our plan for tonight. How are you going to play your part? Julian raised his eyebrows and stood up straight. I'm following your lead. This was your idea, after all. I gently touched the amethyst necklace at my chest and smiled to myself. An idea suddenly popped into my head. How about we work together, one on the inside and one on the outside? After we greeted a few people, we continued towards our seats. Along the way, Julian chuckled softly and said, That gentleman is one of the top art collectors in Europe. I don't remember seeing his name on tonight's guest list. The man seemed to realize something, and his smile deepened. I commented on how busy the staff seemed, which wasn't typical for an auction run by this host, Lee. Lee himself was sitting on a high seat on the second floor, surveying the venue with a cold expression, his eyes focused mainly on Julian and me. Just then, a slender arm wrapped gently around my waist. "Don't worry," a warm voice whispered in my ear. We stood there for a moment, looking like an intimate couple. This public display of affection drew even more attention and seemed to annoy a certain someone nearby. I couldn't believe that Liam, whose life was in complete chaos, had still managed to show up at the auction tonight and was even seated right next to me. As I sat down, Liam instantly composed himself, looking cool and distant in a perfectly tailored white suit. It was all an act. I glanced at Julian, who seemed completely unfazed, though I could see a faint light from an in-ear transmitter hidden in his hair. Tonight was going to be interesting. As the auction progressed, my painting was finally brought to the stage. When the curtain was pulled back, a portrait of a handsome young man in the sunlight was revealed, sparking murmurs throughout the room. The person in that painting looks so familiar. Isn't that Liam? I think I've seen that painting at Julian's house. The next item, the auctioneer announced, is titled Hope, provided by Miss Ava. Despite recent controversies, Miss Ava's incredible artistic talent is highly respected in the art world. This is a charity piece, and all proceeds will be donated to the girls' education fund. This announcement sparked even more discussion. People had already noticed Liam and me sitting next to each other. Did Liam really win Ava back after the wedding fiasco? Why else would they be sitting together, showing off a painting like this? As the bidding started, Liam unexpectedly opened with a bid of $1 million. On the other side of the room, Mr. Dubois confidently countered with $2 million. However, the older man was frowning slightly, his gaze shifting between me and the painting. Without hesitating, Liam raised the bid to $5 million. Mr. Dubois frowned even more. It was clear he liked my art, but not the subject of this particular piece. "All right, $5 million going once, $5 million going twice." No one else bid, and a triumphant smile started to form on Liam's lips. Just as the auctioneer was about to bring the gavel down, I stood up gracefully. "My apologies, everyone. This is not the item I intended to auction tonight." The room fell silent. All eyes, filled with confusion and pity, turned to Liam, whose face had gone completely pale. Mr. Dubois, however, stood up excitedly and raised his bidding paddle. "Yes, this is the hope I have been searching for. $10 million. The atmosphere immediately became electric, and a well-known philanthropist joined the bidding. $11 million. $12 million. As I returned to my seat, Julian finally made a small gesture, discreetly touching his ear. He looked at me with a helpless expression and then took my hand, which I had accidentally pricked with a pin, and gently brought my finger to his lips. "I just care about my painting fetching a high price," I shrugged. Finally, the gavel came down. Hope was sold for $35 million to Mr. Dubois, who looked as happy as a child with a new toy. A disheveled and embarrassed Liam quickly left the venue. The auction continued. A few moments later, a waiter in a black uniform handed me a card. "Congratulations, Miss Ava, on the successful sale of your item. This is your entry pass. Please contact the guide at Gate 8 when you are ready." I clutched the card in my hand, feeling a wave of relief. A large hand gently covered mine, and Julian leaned in close. My mind finally relaxed a little. I stood up and headed towards Gate 8. "Hello, Miss Ava," the guide greeted me respectfully. He then tied my hands with soft restraints, placed a blindfold over my eyes, and put earplugs in my ears. After leading me through a maze of corridors, I finally arrived in a completely dark venue. This place was different from the public auction. Each guest had a private lounge to protect their identity. This was the true nature of the Onyx Room. While the world outside was bright, this underground place was filled with dirty secrets. The items up for auction here weren't just art or jewelry. At that moment, on the stage, was a young man locked in a cage. A robotic voice echoed through the speakers in the lounges. "This is a donor with a rare blood type. The value is undeniable. Please place your bids, esteemed guests. Thank you for your participation. Please be patient as the security check concludes. The guides will escort you back to your seats." Suddenly, I was back in the twisting corridor, still blindfolded and unable to hear. As I walked, I felt a faint, metallic-smelling breeze brush against my hair, coming from a passageway I hadn't been down before. I quickly touched the amethyst necklace I was wearing. The next moment, a deafeningly loud noise pierced through my earplugs, shaking the entire area. I panicked and screamed, running back and causing chaos among the other guests in the narrow hallway. In the confusion, I slipped into the unfamiliar passage. After a few moments, the guide found me cowering in a corner, shaking with fear. He quickly removed my earplugs. "I'm so sorry, Miss Ava. There was an incident upstairs that must have frightened you. Please, follow me out quickly." Mr. Julian is furious. He urgently led me out through door number 8 and back into the light. The auction hall was in chaos, with guests huddled together in fear. Julian had Lee, the host, by the collar, looking ready to tear the place apart. As soon as he saw me, his expression softened. He pushed Lee aside and walked towards me, pulling me into a hug. I quickly squeezed out a few fake tears into his shoulder. Honey, I was so scared. Back in the car, I couldn't stop laughing. If I were an actress, I'd win all the awards, I joked. Julian just shook his head and handed me a small USB drive that had been hidden in a decorative charm I had given him earlier. He carefully wrapped a bandage around my finger where I'd pricked it. I teased him about his concern, and he responded by leaning over and kissing me gently. When we got home, I rushed into the studio Julian had prepared for me and, using a brush and ink, meticulously drew the map of the Onyx Room's lower level from memory. Julian came up behind me and wrapped his arms around me. "I don't even need to verify this," he said, his voice tired but gentle. "I trust your work." The next day, news of the raid on the Onyx Room spread like wildfire, and my name was connected to it, sparking all sorts of reactions. While I enjoyed my newfound notoriety on social media, Julian was busy dealing with the fallout and profiting from the chaos. Unexpectedly, both Mark and Liam were implicated, as it was discovered they had taken a girl from the Onyx Room's lower level 8 years ago. With the Onyx Room affair settled, Julian had some free time, and I immediately presented him with a contract. "We've been invited to be guests on a dating show. Are you free?" Julian paused, amused by the idea of us, a newly married couple, going on such a show. But he couldn't resist my pleading and eventually agreed. As he looked at me, a slow smile spread across his face. "You saw right through me, didn't you?" he said. "The village I told you about is near the recording site for this show." The mountains near the village were beautiful but rugged, and the only road was a long, winding detour. Just seeing them made me eager to explore. So, after we finished the opening segment of the dating show, I changed into hiking clothes, grabbed my sketchbook, and headed straight up the mountain, leaving Julian behind to make dinner. The live comments were full of surprise. "Wait, they're not even together? What kind of dating show is this? I came here to watch them be a cute couple." After that, I couldn't see the comments anymore because there was no signal in the mountains. A cameraman followed me, looking exhausted as we trudged through the wilderness. By the time I finished mapping the routes around the mountains, the sun was beginning to set. As I came down the path, a tall figure was walking towards me, bathed in the golden light of the sunset. He was carrying a lunchbox. "If you hadn't come back when you did," he said with a smile, "I was about to bring your food up to you." "I can't draw in the dark, can I?" I replied, linking my arm through his as we walked back to the campsite. I immediately noticed that everyone was looking at me strangely. The live comments were now sarcastic. "The great heartbreaker is back." How did I go from a cute wife to a heartbreaker, I wondered. What had happened in the few hours I was gone? Feeling the strange atmosphere, I went to watch the replay from earlier in the day while I took a shower. At first, Julian had kept his distance, sitting in a tent and looking at business proposals like a mafia boss. No one dared to approach him. But then, as the other guests started preparing dinner, Julian suddenly appeared behind them with a knife, his expression cold and serious. He nearly scared them to death. They could only watch, trembling, as he skillfully chopped meat and vegetables. After preparing meals for everyone else, he took up a spatula and said, "I might as well make yours now, too." He served up a feast, and the other guests instantly became his biggest fans. "Julian, you're an amazing cook. This is so delicious." Once he had won them over with food, they started chatting freely. "Julian, tell us your love story with Ava." Julian smiled faintly. "There isn't much of a love story between us. Back in the day, I confessed to her 10 times, and she rejected me 10 times. 10 times? I didn't remember that at all. But then Julian actually pulled out 10 old fashioned love letters. Except for the first one, I had never seen any of them before. The guy was blatantly lying on a live show. I stomped out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel. Julian, when did you confess to me 10 times? Julian, who was leaning against the head of the bed reading a book, looked me up and down. The live broadcast was still running. I hurried back to change my clothes amidst the shocked gasps of the online audience. When I came out again, I climbed right onto the bed next to him. Hurry up and explain! Raising an eyebrow, he loosely wrapped an arm around my waist. His other hand picked up the 10 letters. Apart from the first one, I slid the other 9 into your desk at school. The next day, they always ended up in the trash can. I don't remember ever throwing away love letters, I said, surprised. Why didn't you just give them to me in person like the first time? Julian looked a bit helpless. You remember why you rejected me the first time, don't you? I recalled the memory. I think I said your handwriting was terrible. It had just been a random excuse. At the time, I only had eyes for Liam. Julian picked up another letter. So, for the second one, I practiced my handwriting. I pursed my lips and carefully opened it. The handwriting was a little better. The third, fourth, and fifth letters showed even more improvement. By the sixth one, I probably wouldn't have cared about the handwriting anymore, I exclaimed. How could they have gone missing? I never would have thrown them out. I glanced at Julian and opened the rest of the letters. Not only had the handwriting improved, but the writing style was much better too. The last 2 letters even had cute little drawings on them. My eyes inexplicably welled up with tears. So you liked me so much that you had to confess 10 times before you gave up? Julian suddenly laughed. Do you have a problem with that? He hugged me tighter, pulling me into his arms. He took a deep breath. Anyway, I have you now. So the letters weren't a complete waste. Wait a minute, I said, still not satisfied. I really didn't throw them away. Before I could finish, Julian lowered his head and silenced me with a kiss. I believe you, he whispered. After we had playfully wrestled for a while, I lay against his chest, breathing softly. Suddenly remembering something, I tilted my head up and pecked his jawline. Julian? It's not too late for a love story now, is it? The next day, as soon as I stepped outside, I was surrounded by the other guests. Ava, the power of first love must be strong, but that guy is such a jerk, don't you think? Ava, why don't you just stay on the show permanently? We can have a massive dating competition for you. Had Julian put something in their food? Sensing that rumors were about to start flying, I quickly pulled out the route map I had drawn the day before. I only left yesterday to draw this. Everyone looked confused. What is it? It's the road plan to connect the village to the main highway, I explained. I then pulled out several proposals from my charitable foundation. I'm planning a program to support the education of girls in mountain villages. But many of these villages are so hard to get to that the children have to walk for hours just to get to school. To help them get an education, we first need to build a road. Since the local government couldn't come up with a feasible plan, I decided to come here and draw one myself. And with the popularity of this show, I thought maybe we could put some pressure on them to act. I casually pulled out a QR code. So, are you interested in doing some charity work with me? Before I could finish, a large hand snatched my phone away. Charity shouldn't be forced on people, Julian said, shaking his head. He then called everyone over for breakfast. I wondered if this counted as forcing his help on me. After the show, the guests all posted about the project online and willingly donated. The whole incident blew up, and the local authorities quickly contacted me, agreeing to let me personally supervise the road construction. Sometimes you just have to be a little forceful. Everything was going well for me. But I heard that the Davenport family was in turmoil again. Somehow, the news that Claire had been adopted from a shady deal at the Onyx Room reached Mr. Davenport. He was confused. If Mark had found his biological sister 8 years ago, why was he only bringing her home now? So he secretly arranged for another paternity test. The result confirmed it. Claire was not his biological daughter. After he confronted Mark, his son finally told him the truth. Mark had felt threatened by my close relationship with both Mr. Davenport and Liam. He had started searching for his long-lost sister, only to find out she had died. So, he bought a girl with an unknown background from the Onyx Room, fabricated her identity, faked the paternity test, and brought her into our family as his new sister, Rose. Soon after, news spread that Mr. Davenport had kicked both of his children out of the family. He tried to contact me, even trying to get close to Julian, but we refused to see him. As for Liam, after his involvement with the Onyx Room came to light, his father, who valued the family's reputation above all else, became wary of him. Without the support of a marriage alliance with my family, he couldn't even stand up to his ambitious brother who was eyeing his position. The next time I saw him was outside the bridal shop where I was trying on wedding dresses. The once proud and aloof Liam stood there in a familiar-looking white suit, looking exhausted, with tired red eyes, staring at me through the glass. Eventually, he took a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket and pressed it against the glass door. It was a sketch. "Ava," his voice was muffled through the glass. "This is the wedding dress and suit you designed for our wedding. You must remember, right? Ava, I'm wearing the suit now. I'm willing to marry you. Will you come back to me?" Before I could even react, Julian, dressed in an even more exquisite wedding suit with small, intricate designs on the cuffs, walked up behind me. Liam, seeing him, suddenly lost his composure. "Julian, who do you think you are, and do you really think Ava will love you? She's just using you to get back at me. Have you forgotten she threw away 9 of your love letters?" I looked at Billy. A spark of something mischievous lit up his eyes, and a faint smile played on his lips. "Oh, it was you," he said mysteriously. He clenched his fist and walked out of the bridal shop. I sighed. Well, that suit would definitely have to be remade. I don't know what happened to Liam after that. By the time Julian returned home late that night, he was a little roughed up but looked incredibly pleased with himself, as if a weight he'd been carrying for years had finally been lifted. "Can't you at least change first?" I said, trying to help him out of his torn tuxedo and push him towards the bathroom. But the next moment, I was pulled in with him. Amidst the sound of the running water, the man, full of energy, pressed me against the cool tile wall. "I love you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You're finally, completely mine." I burst out laughing, tilting my head back to kiss the corner of his eye.